All right. So for the shoulder work, you're going to need one block. And when we use this, a couple of different times, I'm going to mention its orientation. So this is what I call the wide angle. This is when we turn it, it becomes more narrow. And then when I spin it this way, it's sort of on the narrowest edge. So we've got wide, medium, and then super narrow. So there's a couple different ways to hold the block. But what we're going to start with here is coming to a standing position, and you're going to take it on its widest orientation and then bring this block behind your back. And at first, I'm just going to hold on to it with my fingers so that when I'm just situating it, it's not going to drop too quickly. But then once I have it and it's about at the level of my sacrum, it could certainly be higher or lower on your body. From here, instead of gripping it with my fingers, I'm going to bring the heels of my hands onto the block and then begin to press in. So we're going to do a couple of variants on this one. This pose, amongst just about all postures I can think of off the top of my head, displays really quickly how limited my shoulder extension is and how much I rely on tipping my head forward. So while you're here with this, you might experience the same thing. So as soon as those arms come behind me, as soon as I press onto the block, I can begin to feel my head pitch forward. So what I'm going to work with here is the idea that this arm behind me is sort of the main event, but I don't want to lose my upright posture any more than I've lost it already. So as I'm here, I'm going to work to bring myself up and to move the weight of my skull back. Okay, on this first pass, you're going to press the heels in, up, heels of the hands, please, onto the sides of the block. Elbows are bent, and I'd like you to think here about bringing your elbows towards one another, but we'll do that without pinching the shoulder blades together or elevating those shoulder blades up. So as you have this, again, heels of the hands press in, level your gaze to look forward, improve your posture. Oh, I'm shaken. And squeeze the heels of the hands on the edge of the block. All right, that's past one. Let's go ahead, take that out, take a couple of breaths. We've got more to do with that. So again, we're gonna keep it on its wide orientation. Once more, I'm gonna swing it behind my back just to get it in place. I'm gonna hold on with fingers. And again, it's about the level of my sacrum, though you might find yours comes a little higher or lower on your back. And it's the big reveal to me, like how tight are my shoulders and how much have I been disguising that by pitching forward? Well, now my arms are behind my back. Oh, can I bring myself upright? Just like we did before, heels of the hands are going to squeeze onto the ends of the block, and you're going to lift your chest, look forward. Okay, press in, elbows come closer, and you've had your elbows bent. Can you keep the elbows bent and unplug that block from your backside? And as soon as I do that, I shake and I quiver, but my head goes further forward. I can't be the only one. So I'm pressing in, moving the block off of my back and trying to keep something of a better upright posture. All right, that's past two. Have it in one hand, take a couple of breaths. All right, so we did the first two with the elbows bent. On these next two, you may not lock out your elbows totally straight, but we're gonna work on the action of elbow extension, which in most cases wouldn't even occur to your brain as something that's difficult to do. So as you come to this, you'll start as you did, oriented the wide way, heels of the hands coming to the sides of the block, elbows closer together. What can you improve for your posture? And then from here, as you squeeze those hands in, can you slide this down your backside? And again, you might not have completely straightened elbows. That's about as straight as mine are gonna get. And squeeze and press and raise your chest and look forward. All right, that's past three. Take a breath. So the next one, you might be able to guess where it's going. Same entrance, pushing those elbows to straighten. And then you're gonna work here on moving the arms back. So starting as we did, block oriented the wide way. Once you grip onto that, just to get it where you'd like it, heels of the hands, press in, elbows towards each other, correct what you can in your upper back posture, push this down your backside to get a straighter pair of arms, And then can you take that block away from your body? Hardest one yet. Ooh. All right, and then let's release that. Okay, so back to that wide block. We're gonna work with a thing that's a little bit more about mobilization rather than just holding still. So you'll be gripping the block. This time it won't be like balancing the block on this exercise. But what I want you to do is to take it into your right hand, take your right arm behind your back, take your left hand behind your back, and then you're just gonna pass this around. And I want you to notice as you go through this, a few keen points. One is, do you have to hula hoop in order to do this? Like, do you move your pelvis out of the way in order to make space for this? I'll show you kind of from an angle. So when the block is passing by my right hip, do I have to lean my pelvis to the left? When it's behind me, do I have to do a back bend? When it's at the right, do I pitch my, or left, does it pitch my pelvis towards the left? Sorry, right. And when it's in front of me, do I move my butt back, right? So there's like this sort of secret hula hoop in there. And try to keep your torso really still as you go through this. And we're passing it around the body, about the level of the navel or hips. We're gonna pass it around the wide way. Okay, you started in your right hand going behind your back. The next time it's in your left hand, reverse the direction and the left hand is gonna go behind your back with the block. Right hand will catch it and you'll pass it in front. Right, and same thing, are you kind of swaying yourself around so that you're moving your pelvis because your shoulders have a hard time making this space? So how stable can you remain in the torso? And I'm sure as I get into my hairiest corner of this, my left arm going behind my back, I'm sure in the upper body, I reveal to all and sundry that little hunch that's been creeping in. So as I go through this, I think I can keep my torso pretty still. Ugh. I'm gonna focus more on keeping my upper body posture looking a little sharper, a little better. Okay, so then you've had it the widest way, orient it the middle width, so it's the narrower than this one, so one little spin, once more in the right hand behind your back to the left one, so we're reversing direction again. You might appreciate here that now that when our hands come together on the block, when it's behind us, that it's a little bit closer spaced, right? So your hands are closer together, meaning you've got to reach another inch or two deeper into this. All right, so I've been doing right hand goes behind the back to pass it to the left. Next time the left hand has it, pass the left hand behind the back. Oh, it's my tighter side. You can hear it in my voice. A couple more of these. And you know, there's a third version coming your way where it's even narrower. And good news for anybody who kind of feels like you need to work on their grip strength. Okay, so next time it's in front of you, flip it so you're holding it the narrowest way. And you're gonna start with it in your right hand. That also means your hand has to span over this bigger surface of the block, right? So there's a little secret grip strength thing in here. All right, I had to pause for a second because it's gonna be harder. Oosh, I'm taking it behind your back, starting on that right hand goes behind you, left hand finds it. And again, do you hula hoop to move your pelvis out of the way in order to move this round your waist or hips? That's not my inclination, but you know what is. I'm gonna slouch because as soon as my arms go behind my back, it shows how tight my chest is, and my chest is not willing to open up on that immediate request, and so I fall forward. So for me, I'm gonna do a few with a lot of focus and concentration and try to do this without hunching overly in my upper back. And my hands feel this, I'll not lie to you. This is kind of a good one for my thumbs. All right, and then we gotta do the last time, last side. So narrow sway, this is gonna be my harder one. I'm gonna take this behind my back, ooh, pass it to my right hand and come in front. And you could try this out with weight. You know, my cork block probably weighs about a pound or maybe just a little more. If you've got a foam block, it's considerably lighter. So that's a great entry point to this exercise. But maybe the next time you think of doing this, you try it out with something heavier. And of course, you could just hold on to an irregular object, like just something from your household that's you can hold in a hand or two, and just try something different. You could try something itty bitty, like a pencil or a pen, right? So the block is just a standard yoga prop, so that's where we start, but that's not to say there aren't a whole bunch of other things that would be useful. Okay, do you observe which side struggles more when it has the block at first? I already know it's my left, that's no big mystery to me. If you can't really tell, just pick a side. And I'd like you to do the tougher side 3 more times, but mega, mega slow, because you might have been using speed to patch the rough spot, meaning you hit the gas for a little momentum when things got a little bumpy. Okay, here's my third and final. Okay, so you picked either the stickier side or you just picked a side. Go the opposite way 3 times really slow. This time, I want you to think about breathing really evenly and really deeply. So I'm gonna go to my right side and I'm gonna stop talking for these 3 because I wanna breathe. Because that's the other thing, right? When the going gets tough, not only do you hit the gas for speed, you might hold your breath. And so what you've trained your shoulder to do is, this is really difficult. You might have to do extra range of motion. But if I go really quickly and hold my breath, you know, then you'll get through it. But that's not a long-term strategy. It's a short-term one. Okay. I kind of feel like my hands need a break from holding on to that. So I'm going to place that down for the moment. And we'll just do a couple of wrist-oriented things. So let's bring the backs of the hands together. Let's have the fingertips close underneath the chin. So that means your hands are high on the chest. And I want you to look down. You might have to move your head back and see, can you get the backs of your hands to touch? Can you get the corners of your thumbs to touch? And when you do so, bring your elbows a little forward. So you don't have to hold your arms against your ribs. You can create some space there. That's an internal rotation, which could be helpful in a moment, a little foreshadowing here. And if possible, with whatever you've attained higher up on the chest, closer towards the chin, could you drag it down? You'd be increasing the wrist flexion. If that's not something your wrists give willingly, then tiptoe towards it. And again, on purpose, bring your elbows forward. See what that does to your shoulder blades on your back. So if you feel that your shoulder blades are being pulled forward, that's fine for this one. Just give it a breath or two, and then just try it the other way for the experiment. Can you bring your elbows forward and then shoulders back? So think about those shoulder blades, maybe moving behind you a little bit, bottom tips of the shoulder blades more connected to mid-back. All right, and then let's come gently out of that. All right, some more block for your shoulders. So you're gonna start with this on your right palm, and you can have here that right elbow along your side for the moment. And what we're gonna do is work on this rotational exercise. It's just a lot of spinning. So you're gonna take this overhead by turning your fingertips to point back, and then you're gonna push all the way on up. And just hold that for a moment. So it's like you're a server in a crowded room, trying to keep your distance from people with your tray overhead. Notice here, if in putting the arm up with this little bit of weight, the pelvis comes forward, the ribs come forward, and what can you draw back behind you? Then you're going to bend your elbow. And somewhere about shoulder level, doesn't have to be perfect, I'd like you to begin to spin your fingertips to face forward. And as you drop this even lower, you're gonna move your elbow back, turn the fingertips to face backwards behind you, and imagine that you are handing this to a buddy who is behind your back. And then you're going to spin forward and then complete that return journey to come all the way up. So you're twirling your arm from external rotation when it's above you, dropping it down, beginning to internally rotate here, and then working some shoulder extension, internally rotating further. And again, like you're trying to hand this off to someone behind you. We're gonna go through one more in slow motion, which I actually find more difficult. And as you go through this last one in slow motion, again, I'll show you from the front, it's that same concept. Are you sort of hula hooping your way around shoulder stiffness? So I drop down, fingers point forward, right about here, no big deal. But when you begin to turn this elbow to the side and fingertips turn in and then behind you, a lot of people will do it like that. And if it's the only way that works, we do it. But I want you to begin, right? And when this block begins to point in towards my waist, do I dip to the side to make room for it? I want you to begin as we go through a few more of these to notice if you can keep your torso still. And as you go through this, are you holding on to the block by pinching it with your finger and your thumb? And, you know, there's a certain cleverness to that. But I'd like you to begin here to keep your finger, your pinky finger and your thumb underneath the block. Harder to do. And again, I'll probably stay pretty stable in my torso, but where I'll begin to go a little bit askew is I'll begin to hunch and my shoulders will come forward, especially in this movement here, where it's really requiring a lot of shoulder mobility. So as I have that, I'm gonna try to keep myself upright. I'm trying, working through that pandemic posture that took a hold. All right, last couple. Training the shoulder to do lots of stuff here in our little short and sweet session. Ugh. Okay, getting a little fatigued. So I'm gonna go up one more time and then I'm just gonna take a pause and put this to the other side. If you feel that you wanna do more or fewer on any given side, please edit for that as we go through this. And again, as I start facing forward, elbow along my waist, I'm just gonna hold this for a moment. And then it's an external rotation. So I'm gonna swivel my fingers to point back. I'm gonna hold this up for a moment. And as I have this, what has to lean forward in order for that arm to be held overhead? So I'm gonna move the pelvis back, drop the ribs down, and just let my shoulder contend with this. And there's some overhead wrist extension here. So this is your little one-handed handstand. Little make-believe in the air handstand. And then you're gonna drop this down. And again, somewhere around the height of your shoulder, it doesn't have to be perfect. You're gonna turn the block so it faces forward. This elbow comes back, and then you're gonna turn your arm to reach back behind you. Again, like you're passing a note in class. And then we'll come back up. Let's do, I mentioned you that a little slower. So let's do the first three in dreadfully slow motion, just so you can catch all the required movements. Whoa. And again, on this last one that we're doing slow for the study of it, can you be keenly aware of any movement in your torso that you might make in order to facilitate the motion at your shoulder? Well, thank you, torso, for being so thoughtful, but we're trying to really get that shoulder to do its good work. So, okay, we'll move through a few here. I'm not counting them off, but we'll get another good number in here. And making sure you get all the way up. And when it's behind you, all the way back. And that little dicey movement When the block turns to point in at your waist or hip, can you free up the shoulder and not, not overly use the wrist? Because I've seen people do this and they really try to do this deviation at the wrist, which is a human movement. So I wouldn't dissuade someone from doing it, but you might be doing more at the wrist. You can see how I'm shaking the wrist around, and a little bit less at the shoulder. So when you get into this moment, which is really kind of the main event here, let that elbow point out and then let that elbow swing in. A few more. All right, last one or two. Until I'm getting a little fatigued because I feel that happening. My hips check into the side when that block begins to spin nearby the waist. All right, last one all the way up. Let's go ahead and place that down for a moment. Again, just a little forearm wrist moment here before we get into kind of our grand finale of that. So I'd like you to take your fingers, pinch them together towards your thumbs, sort of like you're making little bird beaks. And what I'd like you to do with those little bird beaks along your sides is to internally rotate your arms. And that's everything from this upper arm bone turning in. You can think of that as like the inner elbow facing your side body or even behind you, that forearm turning in, the back of the wrist facing your thighs to the point that your little bird beaks are pointing out to the sides of your space. And once you have that full internal rotation, how much can you bend your wrist? So your bird beaks are trying to point upwards. And I'm really compounding, and you can release that and do a few more, a lot of movement here. So if you feel like this is really sticky for you, good, it means I did my job, where I try to put together a whole bunch of things. Now, when you work this internal rotation, we tend to have a habit of like pulling the shoulder blades forward. They sort of pair together in a certain logic, but while you have your internal rotation, can you actually move your arms, your shoulders back? So you're steeply internally rotated, but you didn't have to hunch your shoulders forward. Last couple of these little wrist flexions with your bird beaks, little shadow puppet bird beaks. I'm going to look at the last couple because rarely are they even. Rarely. And can you keep your internal rotation? And the next time that you have your bird beaks pointing up, hang on to that and just see if you can get any more wrist flexion out of this. Trying to do something very different than what your arms are doing for most of the day. I think this is it. All right, and then release that and shake it out even if that helps. We've got one more bird beak exercise, one that I have found recently very helpful. So I hope it resonates with you as well. So back to pinching fingers and thumbs together, back to a super distinct internal rotation. So not just like hands turn in, but like roll in. Use the muscles that contribute to internal rotation. They might be a little underutilized. And then can you point your bird beaks up? That's wrist flexion. And then from here, by a small amount, can you take your arms out to the sides and then back down? And then up and out to the sides and back down. And you can change the angle on that. So here's this coming forward and wider. That doesn't quite have the same catch that I'm looking for. So I'm gonna go alongside my body. That's pretty interesting. And then I'm gonna go behind myself a little bit, not by much, but just a little bit back. Oh yeah, there's the forearm stretch I was dreaming of. That's good stuff. Okay, maybe one or two more of these. Oh, I could do this for 10 more minutes. All right, last one. And then release. Okay, so let's return to that spinning block, which is really your spinning arm bone. And we're going to kind of link together the two sides of that last exercise we were doing. So starting with it on the right hand, you turn your fingers back to push the block up. You drop, elbow bends, fingers turn in and in and in and in. And then instead of reaching straight back, bend your elbow to bring this across your back, and then slide your left hand under your right one. And then you're gonna slide your right hand out and complete this overhead. And then we're gonna drop back down. So the passing will happen behind you. Right hand under left, left hand slides out, and then overhead we go. Drop down, turn in, swing back and behind, slide that hand out, and then back to the other side. Let's do a few of these. So now you're passing a note to the person beside you, whereas before we were passing it to the person behind us. So behind your back, sneaky, sneaky. And this is a little bit more of an advancement of the other one, a progression, because it's like when both arms are behind your back, you don't get to go one side or the other. You got to stay there. So make sure you're not leaning your pelvis forward. And up we go. Get a couple more of these in, passing it behind your back. One hand slides under, the other one can slide out. I've broken a sweat, just in case anybody's wondering, is this difficult? It's difficult for me. All right. Next, this will be a little bit off camera, I think. Maybe I'll back up just to see if I can get it. Once it's overhead, go ahead and transfer hands. So you can't really slide it the same way because it's sort of pointing back. So what I do is I kind of just take one hand under and jiggle the other hand out. So down it comes, spin, pass behind your back, slipping onto the other hand, overhead, top hand reaches, drop down as soon as, and go behind. So the full circuit here. And try not to spend too much time passing it from hand to hand. Like if you're gonna make anything quick, make it that. And as soon as you can, you're not pinching it with finger and thumb, she said, just as she was doing that. You are holding on to it with the palm of your hand. All right, you're going one direction, go in the other. Last couple, last few. Well, that takes more coordination. What is going on with that? But getting it off of my right hand into my left overhead, I get a little fear. It's like, what if it drops on my head? Something about that side. Oop, oop. All right, last couple here. And then next time it's in front of you, hands together on the sides of the block. Take the block up higher towards your chest. It's like prayer pose on the sides. And can you draw this down by any amount? Elbows are very far forward. You can see here, I'm not going to clamp them to my sides, but in order to get the long edge of the block in front of my sternum, those elbows come forward. And shoulder blades down. And nice work, nicely done. All right, hope that gave your shoulders something to think about.